The time has come, my friends. There's a new series that takes place in this world that's coming out this September, so I figured before we go back to Middle-earth once again, I should probably make videos on Peter Jackson's movie trilogy. This has been a long time coming since this trilogy is one of my favorite movies of all time. There's really nothing like it. So, where to begin? The Lord of the Rings. The Fellowship of the Ring. So, the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy is directed by New Zealand-born director Peter Jackson, and it's based off of J.R.R. Tolkien's trilogy of books, which was published in the 1950s. So, before I dive into the plot, I have to set up the world of Middle-earth. See, when it comes to the fantasy genre, the first world that comes to mind is Middle-earth. This is the fantasy land to end all fantasy lands. Yeah, we have elves and goblins and dwarves and orcs, knights in shining armor, swords and wars. Middle-earth is so thick with lore. There's an enormous timeline. The Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age of this world. And so let's start off in the Shire. See, with all the wars and all the history that Middle-earth has, the people of the Shire, known as hobbits, they really live a carefree lifestyle. They don't care about all the goings-on in Middle-earth. Our main character of this entire story is Frodo Baggins, played by Elijah Wood, and he is the nephew of Bilbo Baggins. Now, Bilbo Baggins, played here by Ian Holm, he actually went on his own adventure. This is the story of The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, which was actually the book that Tolkien wrote before Lord of the Rings, which would later be adapted into its own movie trilogy. But since Bilbo has come home from his big adventure, he hasn't really been the most respectable of hobbits. You can tell there's just something off about him. He doesn't socialize much. You learn that during this adventure he went on, he picked up this ring, and there is a lot more to this ring than initially meets the eye. So Frodo lives in the Shire in Hobbiton with his friends, Samwise Gamgee, played by Sean Astin, also Mariotic Brandybuck, known as Merry, played by Dominic Monaghan, and Peregrine Took, known as Pippin, played by Billy Boyd. So life is fine in the Shire. They're celebrating Bilbo's 111th birthday, and Gandalf the Grey Wizard comes to town. Now, Gandalf is one of the most important characters in Lord of the Rings. He's played by Sir Ian McKellen, brilliantly, by the way. Talk about just perfect 10 out of 10 casting here. And yeah, you heard that right. Gandalf is a wizard. So straight up, he has a magical staff. He has magical qualities. And really, he kind of wanders the world. He keeps a watchful eye over Middle-earth. You know, he's like a protector of the world. A force for good if ever there was one. In fact, he helped Bilbo out on his whole adventure, which resulted in a really good friendship between the two, which is why Gandalf visits him for his birthday. But it's here that he learns that Bilbo has this ring. And instantly, Gandalf's like, yeah, that's suspicious. See, this ring is the one ring to rule them all. We learned that this ring was forged in the land of Mordor by the Dark Lord Sauron eons ago. Back in the Second Age, when all the rings of power were forged, the Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret this master ring to rule all free peoples of Middle-earth. Now, 3,000 years prior to the events of The Lord of the Rings, Sauron was defeated by Isildur. However, the ring was not destroyed. And this ring really contains the soul of Sauron, all his evil, all his malice. So in reality, Sauron is still alive in a way. Sauron's body was destroyed, but his soul lives on in this ring. And now it's in the possession of Bilbo Baggins. How did that come to be? Oh, well, he must have picked it up in Gollum's cave. So in the land of Mordor, which is where the dark forces reside, there are evil goings-on. Armies are forming, and they have a hold of Gollum, and Gollum spills that the ring has been taken by Bilbo Baggins to the Shire. Young Frodo learns this from Gandalf, and now he has to take the ring, because Bilbo is gone at this point. So Frodo and his friends have to get the ring to safety. But since the enemy more or less knows where the ring is, they have sent the Nazgul to collect it. The Nazgul were actually once kings of men, but they were each given powerful rings by Sauron, and one by one they fell to his darkness. So now they're just creatures with no souls. They live only to serve Sauron, so they are after the ring. They will kill the one who carries it, and they will deliver it to the Dark Lord. And this is all pretty much the first quarter of the movie. Yeah, we're not even halfway through yet. There's a lot of build-up involved in this story, but it's all great build-up, by the way. One of the greatest things about the Lord of the Rings trilogy is that no scene, no dialogue, nothing is unimportant. Everything matters, whether it's part of world building or character development or just entertainment. Everything is relevant. And also in terms of atmosphere and tone, The Lord of the Rings just nails it. When it's supposed to feel serious, it absolutely feels serious. It feels like the fate of the world might just be in the balance here because of this ring. ring. The Nazgul are chasing Frodo and his friends, and eventually we get to the Elven city of Rivendell. Now, Rivendell, a lot of important things happen here. First of all, we meet some elves, and we see that the elven lifestyle is very different from the hobbits. See, in this world, elves are actually immortal, and therefore they're very wise. The place is very lush, it's beautiful visually speaking. There's waterfalls everywhere. I should probably touch on the visual effects at this point. See, this movie came out a little over 20 years ago, and there are definitely some scenes throughout this trilogy where you're like, oh yeah, I can tell that that's a little dated. Like, oh yeah, he's definitely in front of a blue screen right there. But I guess this is one of those cases where you can brush all that aside for the sake of just great storytelling, great world building, great atmosphere and tone, because when you're in Rivendell, you're just in awe. So now the ring is in Rivendell. Rivendell is run by Lord Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving, and he tells Gandalf, he's like, the ring can't stay here, it won't be safe here, because the evil forces will come and we just do not have the power to fight them off. So really, we only have one choice when it comes to this ring. The ring must be destroyed. And so a council is held to decide the fate of the ring, which results in Frodo stepping up and saying, I will take the ring to Mount Doom in Mordor to drop it into the fire and destroy it. He bravely takes up this quest, although he does not know the way, and so he gains the help of the Fellowship of the Ring, which is this new party of 9 companions who will now go on this quest. This includes Frodo and his 3 hobbit friends, Gandalf the Grey, a human soldier from Gondor named Boromir, played by Sean Bean, an elf named Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom, a dwarf named Gimli, played by John Rhys-Davies, and last but not least, we have Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen, who is another one of the most important characters in Lord of the Rings. See, Aragorn is supposed to be the current king of men in the capital city of Minas Tirith in Gondor. I know, there's a lot of terminology, just keep up. But he doesn't really want that kind of power, he walked away from it. But now that this quest is in motion, he realizes that, yeah, his destiny is bigger than whatever he thought it might have been. So for now, he's going to accompany Frodo on this quest. And so we have the Fellowship of the Ring, and they embark to Mordor. Now, at this point, I have to bring up the fact that the Lord of the Rings trilogy was all shot in New Zealand because that's where Peter Jackson is from. And really, these movies are a showcase for some of the sweetest on-location cinematography you'll ever see in cinema. When the Fellowship sets off and they're hiking on these mountains, you have these great big wide helicopter shots that are just unmatched. They're beautiful, and the music's kicking on. Oh yeah, now we get to the music. The musical score for the Lord of the Rings trilogy was written by Howard Shore, and it is among the best film score ever written, ever. All the themes are just amazing, like the Fellowship theme, bam, bam, ba, ba, bam. It just does not get much more iconic than that. And Shore wrote themes for everything and everyone in Lord of the Rings. The Shire has its own theme, Rivendell has its own theme, The Ring has its own theme, and eventually, after watching these movies enough times, you grow to memorize and love them all, because they're just brilliant. There are more themes that I will bring up as the trilogy goes on, but for now I guess those are the only ones I'll mention. So as the Fellowship is on their trek, they eventually get to the dwarf city of Moria, which is pretty much a big mine, although you soon realize that it's not a mine. It's a tomb. Because the whole underground city has been turned over by goblins, so all the dwarves are dead, including Gimli's cousin Balin, who was one of Bilbo's original companions on his adventure. But here's where we get to some pretty big action scenes. Because I would say that the most common enemy that our main characters face throughout the story are orcs. What are orcs? Well, orcs were actually elves once, but they were taken over by the dark powers. They're a twisted, mutilated form of life, and now they serve Sauron. So the Fellowship has to get out of there. They're fighting these orcs, they're doing an alright job until a more ancient evil awakens. Yeah, we have woken up the Balrog of Morgoth, a demon of the ancient world. This thing is awesome. I mean, come on. It's this huge blazing demon with wings and a sword and a whip. How is that not just the coolest thing you've ever seen? And dude, when Gandalf is standing toe-to-toe with this thing, again, we get another piece of iconic cinema right here. You shall not pass! What an epic moment. Now, I'm not gonna spoil what happens at the end of this first chapter of The Lord of the Rings, but there is one more character that I do want to touch on before I wrap this video up. So after Moria, they get to Lothlorien, which is another elven realm, and they meet Lady Galadriel, who's played by Cate Blanchett. Now, Lady Galadriel is pretty much the wisest elf of all. She's known as the Lady of Light, and she has this quality about her that's just, it's almost psychic in a way. She definitely has some magical powers, and they make her seem like this ethereal being of sorts. It's really cool. Alright, so here is where I'm gonna wrap this video up. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring is an amazing first chapter to one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. You love the characters, you love the world, you love how serious the movie takes itself, you love the adventure, you love the score, you love the cinematography. Just, I'm telling you, like I said, there's really nothing out there in the world of cinema, in everything we've gotten, that matches The Lord of the Rings in terms of grandeur. And we're only a third of the way through. Stay tuned for OP Wizards and a groundbreaking, show-stealing motion capture character. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, have you seen it? Have you seen this trilogy? Where does this chapter rank in your hierarchy? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!